Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews, and welcome back to my Star Trek Top 100, where I count down my 100 favorite episodes in the Star Trek franchise, only the Legacy Trek shows, I should say, the first 5 shows. Up through Enterprise, I will be doing a separate Top 25 video for Modern Trek later in this month. This is my Top 100 for Legacy Trek. You should watch all of my videos on my Top 100 if you have not already. But also, I will put the Top 100 up to this point, 100 through 4. That will be written out in the description below. So, first order of business is to review my picture clue. So I do want to give a big shout out and congratulations to Maddie Jester for being the first one to get the correct answer, and the only one besides my brother. My brother, I already knew that he knew it. So, I mean, I still want him to tell me the answer, but I mean, I know that he knows these. So I also like giving shout outs to other people besides him. And in this case is Maddie Jester. Also got one incorrect answer and one comment full of joke incorrect answers that I got entertainment out of. So here's the picture clue again. This, of course, is Jack Nicholson's Joker from the 1989 film Batman with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. The incorrect answer I got came from Freaky Boy 1469, who guessed Voyager the Thaw, presumably because there's a clown here. That is incorrect. The Thaw wasn't at number 44 on my top 100. It's a great Star Trek episode. Definitely not my number 3. Also, the clown is a little too broad. I had said in my picture clue that you need to look specifically at Jack Nicholson's Joker. Then I got a comment from PHF 2016 who said, I will present you with an info dump of losing nominees, and then gave a list of silly losing answers, and I won't read all of them because it'll take too long. I just want to read a few of them. The first one, he said, in the 1990 movie, which I'm sorry, I have to give a little correction. It was a 1989 movie. I'm a little bit of a nitpicker, but it did come out in 1989. But anyways, so in the movie, the Joker famously proclaimed of Gotham that this town needs an enema. Rom became Star Trek's most prominent waste extraction technician and therefore began regularly giving a town an enema in Deep Space Nine's bar association. I love it. I love how it is like a really convoluted and long-winded. I love it. That's a great answer. A great intentional incorrect answer. Another one was Joe Piscopo and Data were jokers in the Next Generation's Outrageous Okana. The thought of anyone making the Outrageous Okana their number 3 Star Trek episode in itself makes me laugh. He also said, well, I'm going to correct this one too. He says, presumably there are jokers present in all poker scenes, a long-running theme from TNG. The first poker scene in TNG was in Measure of the Man. I don't know. Maybe they play poker differently in the 21st century, but I have played a lot of poker in my day and never used jokers. Like, you take jokers out. I mean, I guess they're present technically, unless you just, completely take them out of the deck before you even start playing poker. But anyways, Measure of the Man also already on my list, but this is just a joke answer, so it doesn't matter. Also, I'll read one more. The Joker hates Batman. Romulans hate Remans, who are Bat people. If this is the key, and if this is an episode only countdown, then it must be Enterprise, United, or the Anar. The Anar didn't make my list. The United was already on my top 100. It was back in the 90s, I think. But again, that's just a joke answer. I really appreciate this comment, and definitely gave me some entertainment. But now I would like to move on to Maddie Jester's correct answer. that my brother also knew. Matty Jester correctly identified that this picture points to the line from Jack Nicholson in this movie. His most famous line to me, it's the line that I most associate with Jack Nicholson's Joker. He says it at least 2 or 3 times in the movie, and that is the line, "Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" And that, of course, leads us to my number 3, In the Pale Moonlight, from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the 6th season of Deep Space Nine. The best episode of Deep Space Nine, in my opinion, and the 3rd best episode in the Star Trek franchise. Now, I do want to make another note on the picture clue, because this is the only picture clue which I think actually is relevant to the episode itself, because Cisco is doing a lot of dancing with the devil in this episode, or another way of putting it, making a deal with the devil. Absolutely some Faustian themes going on in this episode. So that line is so applicable to this episode that I kind of wonder if they didn't name this episode after that line from Batman. When I was doing my research, I had assumed that I would discover that the phrase "dance with the devil in the pale moonlight" comes from some poem in the 19th century or something, and that's where the Batman came from, and that's where the episode came from. But that is not the case. In the phrase "in the pale moonlight" does have origins, as far as we can tell, in Charles Dickens' novel, but it doesn't say anything about dancing with the devil. The dancing with the devil in the pale moonlight comes from Batman. And since Cisco is dancing with the devil in this episode, it seems like they kind of named it after that line from Batman. So the picture clue has a direct relevance, and I will be talking about Cisco making a deal with the devil or dancing with the devil as I go through my review. Now, I will do a recap scene by scene, as I always do, but before I get to that, let's start with the main reason why I think this is the 3rd greatest episode in the franchise. And to get there, I want to talk about this idea of Roddenberry's vision and this accusation that fans often would give to Deep Space Nine, that they were breaking Roddenberry's vision. And yeah, if you were to stick to the very letter of the law, the very minutia of Roddenberry's 1960s antiquated vision, then yes. But Star Trek lasted well beyond the 1960s, and therefore it was important for it to expand and evolve, and therefore that vision needed to expand and evolve as well. And also, on a side note, I want to get away from deifying Gene Roddenberry the way Star Wars fans sometimes deify George Lucas as well. George Lucas made the prequels. He's not perfect. Gene Roddenberry wrote some terrible episodes at the end of season 2 of the original series, all those alternate Earth episodes where they travel all across the galaxy just to find a planet just like Earth. That bullshit was him. He also wrote one of the worst episodes in Star Trek with when he tried to do his backdoor pilot for I just had a brain fart. I'm blanking on the name of that episode. I have talked about it countless times on my channel, but now as I'm about to say it, I'm blanking on the name of it. But you know, that crappy episode at the end of season 2 where he tried to do his backdoor pilot, that was him. Why am I blanking on it? Anyways, so maybe blocking it from my memory. And then he's also responsible for the first season of The Next Generation, including a code of honor. So don't tell me Roddenberry is some infallible god, first of all. And secondly, where he did have a good vision of this utopian future, Star Trek needed to expand on that. Part of that vision was that everyone would be in peace. Now, I push back against the idea that you're not allowed to depict war, because Roddenberry introduced the Klingons and the Romulans, and they always had enemies that they had conflicts with and were in war with. So you can't. It's not that you can never show war. But Roddenberry had a very staunch pro-peace message, and part of this utopia, we've moved past war, at least on Earth, and everyone is in peace, and there's this United Federation that works in peace. That's part of it. But where Deep Space Nine expanded on that vision is depicting the horrors of war. I think there's a couple TOS episodes that touched on this too, like getting into the reality and horrors of war. But I think Deep Space Nine really expanded on that, and none more than this episode that really draws attention to the fact that in order to engage in war, you have to get your hands dirty. War is not a clean business. If you're going to be a part of it, if you're going to save lives, you're going to have to take lives. And you're going to have to do some sketchy things. That is the nature of the beast. And this episode points that out perfectly. This episode, therefore, represents an evolution in Roddenberry's vision for a new generation, for the 1990s. And moving forward, that vision continually evolves. It needs to evolve. It cannot be stuck in the 1960s. So that is a very important evolution to Roddenberry's original vision that needed to happen. And that is why this is the third greatest episode in the Star Trek franchise. Now, let me go ahead and do my full recap scene by scene. Theoretically, this shouldn't take as long as it took me the last two previous entries in my top 100, because those were each 2-hour-long episodes that I had to recap. This is only a 1-hour-long episode, but I've already had a long rambly intro, so I can make this be an hour long just by rambling, but we'll see. Anyways, let's go ahead and go scene by scene for my number 3 in The Pale Moonlight. All right, so the episode opens up with Sisko sitting in his quarters trying to record this log, and we see that he's having trouble getting the right words, and he seems to be talking about something that he regrets and that he feels guilty about, but we don't know what it is at this point. I love this format. I think that is a good hook to pull us into the episode. What is Sisko talking about? What has happened? And I can't imagine this episode without this format. This all throughout the episode, Sisko is telling us the story as it has already happened, but we don't know what has happened yet. I mean, after the 100th time of seeing it, we do. But when we first see the episode, we don't know what has happened. And there's some twists throughout. We have certain expectations of what has happened that are twisted and turned to different things. So that really makes Sisko's log that much more effective as a storytelling device. I cannot imagine what this episode would be like if had just been played straight out and we were just watching things as they occurred without Sisko's narration throughout, because I think Sisko expressing his inner thoughts and his feelings and his regrets and how he could have gotten out of here and how he could have stopped it there, all of those things add to the episode, and I can't imagine not having that there. Now, yes, he does do some overacting, and I will talk about his overacting as I go through the episode. But in this case, I kind of love his overacting. So, but we will get to that. So, we're introduced to the log. Then he says, I suppose it started 2 weeks ago, where I had posted the list of war casualties. Now, this is something that only Deep Space Nine has done. And again, it is adding to the reality of war, that there are casualties, and making you feel the pain of war and reality of war that Star Trek didn't always do. So, again, an expansion and evolution of Roddenberry's pro-peace vision of the future. Now, Dax, Bashir, and Cisco are talking about how great it would be if the Romulans joined the war. And Dax says, well, there's no way that they would do that. And that's when Cisco becomes determined to get the Romulans involved. And that we hear that through the log. Again, the log's so crucial. And that is when I decided I must get the Romulans involved in the war. And then the opening credits. So a great hook. A great cold opening for this episode. Before I go on, little side note: Assignment Earth. Assignment Earth. Why could I not forget the name? Why could I not remember the name of that episode? It was Assignment Earth, of course. If you typed a comment saying Assignment Earth, you're going to see that I came up with it later. So I hope that people don't type comments to correct me until they watch the whole video. Assignment Earth. anyways. So we get the opening credits. Underrated opening credits, in my opinion. I love the Deep Space Nine theme. Anyways. Come back. Cisco and Dax do a little role play, like a little spontaneous role play where Dax is playing the Romulan. And Cisco is trying to make his case, and Dax does a really good job. She does a really logical interpretation of what the Romulan would say, and this leads Cisco to the conclusion that we need proof. So his first idea is that there's got to be some proof on Cardassia somewhere behind closed doors, and that maybe Garrick could have some connections to get in there and get this information. And quite frankly, this was a far-fetched plan to begin with. I think it wasn't a very good plan, and the likelihood of it succeeding was very, very low. I think he was pretty ignorant of the realities of the situation there. But I think Garrick knew. But Garrick was like, okay, well, we'll go ahead and play along with this. But I think Garrick knew right from the beginning that this probably wasn't going to work, and there were going to probably be other things that they were going to have to do to achieve Cisco's goal. And I think that he is already kind of maybe even laying the groundwork of his plan in his head. So this is where Cisco, I think, first dances with the devil and first signs his name on the dotted line with that devil's contract where Garrick says, this is going to be very bloody, very messy business. Are you prepared for that? He wants Cisco to acknowledge that he is ready to do whatever it takes, no matter how bloody, no matter how messy. And Cisco says, I just posted the 14th casualty list. I'm already in a very bloody, very messy business. But I don't think Cisco quite understands what Garrick means by bloody and messy. He doesn't understand. He will by the end of this episode, but he doesn't. So he's like, yeah, whatever. And he says, I will do whatever it takes to get the Romulans in the war. And you can see Garrick's eyes light up. You can see the light bulb coming out of his head like, yes. So this is when Cisco has given Garrick permission to do what he ends up doing later in the episode, even though Cisco doesn't realize that's what he's doing. That is how Garrick interprets that. It's like, oh, you'll do whatever it takes, huh? Okay, all right. We'll do that then. I don't think Cisco understands what's just happened, but Garrick does. Garrick may have already been starting to plan out in his head the plan that he would ultimately carry out later in this episode. So Cisco says, kind of alludes to this in his log. He says that he had good intentions, but he basically had no idea what he was getting himself into. It's like, I had good intentions in the beginning. That seemed like enough. He also quotes the line, the cliche that his dad had recited to him before, that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Then in the next scene, Cisco learns that the Dominion has conquered Beta Z. That's an interesting choice. Like, couldn't like read their minds and like stop them from conquering before they conquer? I don't know. They're probably not. I don't know. And how come Council Troy in any of the movies never mentioned the trauma of her planet being conquered by the Dominion? That seems like a big deal. But actually, no, I'm joking. Truthfully, I think Beta was a really good choice for this plot point because you wouldn't have to choose a planet that the audience would have a connection to. Because if they just made up some random, like, Delta Centauri 5 or something that meant nothing to the audience, then it wouldn't feel as powerful, wouldn't have the same kind of stakes. But at the same time, you couldn't make the stakes too high. Like they couldn't say, oh, the Dominion conquered Vulcan, because then it'd be like, what? They took Vulcan? That's a huge deal. There should be a whole episode just about that. And that would distract from this episode. So Beta Zed's actually the perfect choice for this plot point. This is a really minor plot point, and I'm spending way too much time on it. That is why my videos are an hour long. I spend 5 minutes talking about Beta Zed. Anyways. Anyways, this raises the stakes. So Sisko goes to Garrick to see how it's going. It's been a couple days, apparently. And Garrick tells him he made contact with some of his operatives on Cardassia, and now they're dead. See, and he makes a comment like, "Oh, I guess that speaks to how good the security is from the Dominion." And I really do believe that Garrick anticipated this. I don't think that Garrick ever thought that Sisko's original plan had any chance of succeeding. And as I said, I think he's already scheming ahead, already planning the things that he does later in this episode. Then we cut to Sisko's log. Maybe I should have stopped the whole thing right there. Maybe I should have said, "Thank you, Mr. Garrick. I'll take that under advisement," and went back to my office and forgotten the whole thing. But I didn't, because I knew in my heart that what he was saying made sense. And so he continues on. And there are a couple times throughout this episode that Sisko says something similar to that in his log. I could have stopped right here. I could have walked away right here, but I didn't. I kept on going. And that just builds the intrigue to the audience of what actually did happen. Because assuming you're watching this for the first time, watching this episode for the first time, not the 100th time, you don't know what has happened yet. So that increases the intrigue. What went wrong? What happened? Another reason why I just absolutely love this plot device of Sisko's log. Okay, so it's at this point where Garrick presents to Sisko this idea of making the Forged Hollow program, demonstrating that the Dominion is planning a Romulan invasion, and the idea is that they're going to convince Senator Vreenek that this is a real thing. So again, I do think Garrick had already come up with this, and I do think he already come up with his end game plan, his ultimate plan. I think he knew that stupid idea about getting information out of Cardassia wasn't going to work. And I think he knew his contacts were probably going to get killed, and that's Garrick. He just kind of doesn't care. That really demonstrates his character. Anyways, so in order for this plan to work, Sisko has got to get this really slimy, sleazy criminal dude, I think his name is Tolar, to get him out of Klingon prison and have him make the forgery. And you can tell that Sisko is really starting to second guess this plan as he is talking to Tolar for the first time, because this guy is sleazy. He's an asshole. He is not a good dude. And Sisko, being the upstanding Starfleet captain, is not used to dealing with this, underhanded, like, criminal aspect of the galaxy here, but now he's forced to get his hands dirty with this. Again, you got to get your hands dirty for war, and I think that's one of the big takeaways from this episode. So after he talks to Tolar, we get a cut to his log again. Why didn't I listen to the voice in the back of my head that I couldn't believe a word he said? I'll never know. And again, having doubts again that he tells us in his log. And then he says, but it didn't take long for me to come face to face with the fact that I had made a mistake. I know he didn't talk like that. Mistake. I'm exaggerating. Anyways. So then Cisco is called down to the promenade by Odo because Tolar has attacked Quark after, let's just be blunt here, after he tried to rape a Damo girl. That is what he was doing. But I do appreciate Odo's kind of like nonchalant retelling of the story, and we're especially like when Odo's like, then Quark in an uncharacteristic show of chivalry jumped in to try to save the Damo girl. I love that spin on it. And then Cisco needs this guy to be off the record, so he can't have Quark pressing charges. So this is a great scene here where Quark has Cisco in the palm of his hand and can milk him for whatever he wants. And I love Quark's line here. I knew there was a Ferengi inside you waiting to get out. Oh, so good. And then at the end of it all, he says, thank you for restoring my faith in the 98th rule of acquisition. Every man has his price, which to me is the rule of acquisition from Ted DiBiase, the $1 million man from the WWE back in the 80s. Every man has his price. Anyways, moving on. In his log, Cisco cites this as his first real moment of doubt. I mean, he had already talked about how, like, I don't know, maybe he should have turned around then, but he probably didn't have those moments of doubt in the moment. So this is where he was ready to call the whole thing off. But then there was another casualty list waiting on his desk, and here's where we get some great overacting by Avery Brooks. He's seen the casualty list on his desk, and he goes, "People are dying out there, and I'm worrying about the finer points of morality." Overacting, yes, love it. Yes, I do. See, here's the thing. At this point in the series, this is the 6th season, it's been established that Avery Brooks is an overactor. If he did not overact this, then I wouldn't buy it. Like, I wouldn't. Well, obviously, Cisco's not that concerned about it because I don't see Avery Brooks overacting. So I expect him to overact at this point. And for some reason, I find Avery Brooks' overacting more endearing than William Shatner's. William Shatner's overacting just annoys the crap out of me. And Avery Brooks' does too sometimes as well. But here it really works for me because if he didn't overact, I wouldn't buy it. Like, of course, if he's gonna say that line, people are dying. He has to go, people are dying. Like, of course, he's got to do it that way. Anyways, so we get a scene with Cisco and Garrick. And the turbo left, Cisco is looking pretty beaten down and defeated at this point. And then Garrick informs Cisco that he's locked Tolar in his room and left him with the impression that if he forces the door open, it will explode. And Cisco says, I hope that's just an impression. To which Garrick responds, it's best not to dwell on such minutia. I fucking love Garrick. I love Garrick so much. Anyways, Garrick then informs Cisco that he's got a guy who can get them the specific Cardassian rod that they need to put the hologram on. That's very, very difficult to find. And this is like the only guy that they can get it from. But it requires biomagnetic gel, which is some kind of dangerous illegal substance that you're not supposed to be just passing around. It can be used for genetic experiments and all kinds of other stuff. But Garrett convinces Cisco this is our only option, so we have to get this. And then Cisco orders Bashir to get this gel, and Bashir protests as he's going to note it in his log. And this is the other aspect of this episode I haven't mentioned yet, is that Sisko is keeping this a secret from everyone. So everyone like Bashir and Worf throughout this episode, and Odo were just like, what's wrong with it? What is he doing? So I think that adds to the stakes, adds to the tension of this episode, that he can't share. And he says it in the beginning of the episode in his log as well. I can't tell anyone this, not even Dax. So from the very beginning, you knew this was very serious. But you see all throughout the episode that he has to keep this a secret from everyone. And Bashir is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So at this point, I think this was probably, I don't know if this was necessary for them to get this biometric gel, because I think Garrick already knew that this plan wasn't going to work, but he did say at the end that he did have some small hope that maybe plan A would work. So that's why they do have to get the biometric gel, and also to kind of like string the audience along. So, because at this point we think that this is the only plan that Garrick has. So that works really well. Okay, so then we get to see them watching this faked holosuite program with the Dominion planning the invasion of Romulus, and we get the impression that this is not the first time that they have watched it, because Sisko says, this is better, you made some improvements. And I love Garrick's line is, all I had to do was add a little petty bickering and mutual loathing, which you foresee, and which did make it really realistic. I don't know how often Sisko and Garrick would have been exposed to their interactions, but still, we, the audience, have. And yes, the petty bickering and mutual loathing is what made it convincing. So then Tolar is like, okay, my work here is done, and he tries to leave the station, and Sisko tells him he isn't going anywhere. Tolar protests, says it's not fair, we had a deal, and then Sisko throws him up against the wall and goes, I'm making a new deal. And that reminds me of Darth Vader. I'm changing the deal. Pray I don't change the deal again. So this is Sisko's evil side coming out. In Sisko's log, he reveals Starfleet Command has given him the blessing to carry out this plan, but that he's the one who's going to have to look the senator in the eye and convince him that a lie is the truth. Then we get the arrival of Senator Vreenek, and then before we meet him, there's a conversation between Garrick and Sisko in the hallway, where Garrick tells Sisko he's going to go on the shuttle to look into the ship's database to see if he can get some intel on the Dominion. Of course, what he's really doing is planting the bomb. I don't think he really actually needed to even tell Sisko that he was even going on the shuttle. I don't think Sisko would have found out. If the Romulans aren't going to find out, I don't think Sisko would have found out. However, it is important to convey that to the audience. So this is a little breadcrumb for us that we can go back and look at and go, oh, this is where he went and planted the bomb. So it works for the story in that way. So we get a little conversation between Vreenek and Sisko. Vreenek is a complete asshole, immediately insults him, taunts him about how the station's probably not going to last very long. Then they have this conversation where they're sitting there drinking. It's not Romulan ale, it's a different Romulan drink, and Vreenek is like, this is not a great simulation. And later he's like, this is a pretty good simulation of the drink. And he times that in the conversation where he says that after Sisko has said something important, and he's just ignoring him. And their conversation is not too dissimilar from the role play that Dax and Sisko do at the beginning of the episode. Not exactly the same, but Dax was pretty right on with how the Romulans would respond. But then Sisko reveals that they have evidence that there's a Dominion plan to invade Romulus, and Sisko's log. And now at this point, he's pouring himself some alcoholic beverage there. Actually, no, I'm sorry. First, he shows Renick the holographic program. Renick says he wants to review the rod, to examine the rod. Then this is where we see Sisko doing the log, pouring himself a drink, talking about waiting and talking about his father's line about either the souffle will rise or it won't. There's not a damn thing you can do about it. And so Sisko says that the stakes were so high that he couldn't follow that advice. And we don't need to be told that the stakes are high. I think we, the audience, are feeling it at this point as well. And so we, the audience, now have this expectation that, yeah, of course, Renick has got to believe this. I mean, things have got to work out for our heroes. So then that makes this next scene that much more shocking, really throws the audience off. This is a little twist in the story where Sisko walks in to see Renick, and we learned that Renick was not fooled at all. And we learned this by Renick holding up the rod and going, "It's a fake!" A line that has been quoted and uses memes, and I know my brother has quoted it many times, like many times over the years. And honestly, why does he say it that way? That makes no sense for him. Like, he's whispering in a throaty voice, "It's a fake." He never talked like that at all. This episode, why does he say it like that? It would make more sense to say something along the lines of, "Did you really think I would be so stupid to be fooled by this obvious forgery?" Or something like that. That seems more like something Renick would say. Why he goes, "It's a fake!" I don't know, but it makes for a great line that we can all make fun of. Or celebrate 30 years later, because not quite 30 years, but yeah. Yeah, so it's a fake. Anyways, go to the next scene. Worf gives Sisko the news that Renick's shovel has been destroyed, and it seems like it was probably the Dominion. So Worf, Dax, and Bashir are kind of getting excited, or maybe this is where the Romulans get into the war. Sisko gets this really angry look on his face, goes, "Excuse me," and gets up and goes straight to Garrick. So at this point, Sisko marches straight down to the promenade, goes right into Garrick's shop, and just punches the shit out of him. But Garrick explains to him that how this is all going to work. He's like, well, hold on a minute here. He explains to him that the Romulans are going to find the data rod, and they won't be able to tell it's a fake because it will seem to have been damaged in the explosion. And it will appear that Renick was trying to bring the rod back as evidence against the Dominion, and the Dominion attacked him, and Sisko agrees with this assessment. And settles down a little bit. He realizes Garrick was right about what's going to happen. And then Garrick has the best monologue of the episode, probably one of the best monologues that he has in the series, or that anyone has, quite frankly, where he says to Sisko, I'm going to quote it exactly, "That's why you came to me, isn't it, Captain? Because you knew I could do those things that you weren't capable of doing. Well, it worked, and you'll get what you want, a war between the Romulans and the Dominion. And if your conscience bothers you, you should soothe it with the knowledge that you may have saved the entire Alpha Quadrant, and all it cost was the life of one Romulan senator, one criminal, and the self-respect of one Starfleet officer. I don't know about you, but I'd call that a bargain." And so good. And Sisko has to accept the fact that that's true. That all of that is true. That he's just saved potentially the entire Alpha Quadrant, or at least given them a much better chance. Things are much less dismal than they had been, and he has a really good chance of saving countless lives because of these sketchy things that he did. And I think Garrick is absolutely right that is why Cisco came to him. Cisco was not consciously aware of this. He was not consciously aware of the dance with the devil, the deal with the devil that he was making. But on a certain level, on some level, subconsciously, Cisco did go to Garrick because he knew Garrick would be able to get this done regardless of the cost. And he was absolutely right. Now, Cisco later says, at his final log of the episode, he says, Garrick was right about one thing. I actually think Garrick was right about everything. Honestly, everything he said was right. But he said, Garrick was right about one thing. A guilty conscience is a small price to pay for the safety of the Alpha Quadrant. So Cisco at least admits that Garrick was right in that. And that's where he does the whole, I will learn to live with this. I will learn to live with this. I have to. I will learn to live with this. That more overacting, but fantastic overacting. I love it. I love those lines. I will learn to live with this. And then he's pouring himself another drink. And then I think we get one of the greatest endings in Star Trek history. I think one of the best lines, and this is right up there with the line from Best of Both Worlds Part 1 that I talked about a couple videos ago, couple entries ago in my top 100. The Mr. Worf fire line. That was a cliffhanger. This one is not, but this is effective just as much. I think if I ever did a top 10 of greatest episode ending lines, to me this is one of the more powerful ones. Computer, erase this entire log and then cut to credits. Absolutely love it. So this is a really powerful way of showing us that Cisco got it all out. This was his catharsis. This is his way of working through it. And now he has moved on. He said, I will live with this. I will move on. And he's moving on now because he's erasing the entire log. And now we're moving on to fighting the war with the Romulans now on the Federation side against the Dominion. So he's put it behind him. And that was such a powerful way of demonstrating that. Computer, erase this entire log and then cut the credits. Chef's kiss. Before I wrap things up here, there's just one scene I have to mention that actually doesn't exist in this episode, but in my mind for many years was always inserting this scene into this episode until not this rewatch, but the last rewatch I did before this. I don't remember when that was, but then I realized, this scene doesn't exist in this episode. So I want you all to tell me if this scene exists in another Deep Space Nine episode, because it must. I don't think I invented the scene, unless this is a Mandela effect here. And I grew up in a parallel universe where the scene was originally in this episode, but I don't think so. So I remember a scene where Cisco is telling 3 Starfleet admirals about the sketchy thing that he did, and the admirals kind of look at each other like, I'm okay with it if you are. You're all okay with it? And they all kind of nod. That must be from a different episode that I've conflated with this episode. I don't think I invented that scene out of thin air. So if one of you could tell me in the comments which episode, Mark, you probably know. Like, what episode is that scene actually from? Because my mind always wanted to insert it into this episode where it doesn't exist. But I don't think I invented that. I think that there is some episode where Cisco tells the some like admirals that he's talking to on the view screen about some sketchy thing, and they all kind of look at each other like, yeah, we're okay with it. So it could have even had to do with Maquis. I don't even remember. But in any case, yeah, if you could put that in the comments, I would appreciate it. And I also appreciate you all sticking with me through this video and sticking with me through my top 100. So up next, my picture clue video for my number 2 on November 10th, and then on November 17th will be my number 2. Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. My dates are all backwards. November 10th is the date of this release. November 17th will be my picture clue video. November 24th will be my number 2. November 24th. November 17th, incidentally, also will be the date where I release my top 25 modern track episodes. So what I think I'm going to do now, I've been thinking about this. I think that I'm going to do not only my top 25, but I'm going to throw in a top 5 worst into there and a bunch of honorable mentions. So it'll be a long video, but it'll be the only coverage of modern track that I'm doing before I say goodbye to my channel. So check that out. That is November 17th. Picture clue for number 2, November 17th. The actual video for number 2, November 24th. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you so much for subscribing. Please check out all of my videos on my top 100. And I shall see you all really soon. Goodbye.